we're talking about the beginning of Mankind. And what made me want to cover this last week is you told really a pretty interesting story about your time with Vader before you even got going with the Mankind character. So we'll just pick it up from there. But before we do, I want to mention you grew up as New York as sort of the home territory, if you will, of the World Wrestling Federation, and you would pretend to be a wrestler with your friends. And I mean, you had really always dreamed of being not just a professional wrestler, but for the WWF, right?
Yeah, the WWF was what I grew up on. As a matter of fact, for years we did not get the WCW show when it was the NWA show, even when almost everyone else got it. For some reason in my county, my cable system did not get it. So I wasn't even exposed to anything else, I think, until 83 when Southwest Championship Wrestling showed up on USA, for a short run. And then there was that one show that covered, it was a WWE show. People didn't know that Vince was intending to cherry pick the best talent and go national. But for a while, it was like, wow, I get to see these guys from the different parts of the country that I've only read about in the Bill Apter magazines. And the George Napolitan, give George his props too.
Sure.
Right? George and Bill were the two guys, the two editors-in-chief. And so I had my sights firmly set on WWF.
So just to add a frame of reference, I don't think a lot of our younger listeners know what's the tie-in with maybe modern wrestling and Southwest. I mean, I don't think a lot of people know that's Tully Blanchard's dad, right?
That's right, yeah, it sure was.
It's just such a small world to think, even now, here in 2022, Tully's on TV.
Isn't that crazy?
It's unbelievable.
When I saw him in '83, he was the Red Rocker.
Yeah.
TCB. There were some good guys there, but it was bloody. Southwest Championship Wrestling was pretty bloody. That's something that you only got on rare occasions in WWF.
So, of course, everybody knows the story, of Jimmy Snuka and Don Muraco and your love of that. But did you know before you went to that show that you wanted to be a professional wrestler, or was it at that show?
I'd wanted to be a wrestler for a couple of years. So when I was 10 or 11, I wasn't necessarily dreaming of becoming a wrestler. I just knew that my brother and I loved wrestling. And we weren't particularly close. So to find something we both liked, and we were drawn to like the hokier moves, the chop, the oblique chop. Like, I don't think I've seen an oblique chop before or since. Can't even remember who did it. It was one of these things where the guys stomping the feet, while they chopped the obliques, and that became a mainstay in what we would do, and we'd have matches. I think I told the story in '97. With Jim Ross, where I backdropped my brother and he broke his nose. And my mom came in and said, no more wrestling, but she didn't say no more dreaming.
There you go.
Said as Mankind. Yeah, that was pretty significant.
So for years, the WWF didn't really entertain bringing you in. And I think it's even been written about that you made a pretty consistent effort there with J.J. Dillon and others. Sort of run us through what that was like.
I think the first time I placed a call was when my parents received a message from Pat Patterson, who was he was high. I don't know if he's head of creative, but he was
up there.
I think Vince was always head of creative. And I get a call, and the first thing I said to my parents, because I got my feelers out there, I'm thinking this is a rib, right? Because I was still a college student. I think I was 21 years old, maybe just turned 22. And
but you knew that Pat was high up.
Yeah, sure. Because I'd been to a couple of shows, and I'd done enhancement work. I did 4 or 5 enhancement matches with Hercules, with the Bulldogs, Killer Bees, Kamala, and I think that was it for me, as far as being that guy getting beaten up on TV. But I knew Pat. Even before I knew what a booker was by that time. But I would see him either congratulate or not reprimand in a constructive way talent when they came in. Pat had a great eye and ear for that type of thing. But the first thing I asked my parents, sensing a rib, was, did he mess up his plurals and singulars, right?
You already knew that.
I already knew that. And my dad goes, oh, his English was terrible. And so, oh, man, great.
That could be real.
Got to be the right guy. So I called up probably 3 or 4 times. This is Cactus Jack returning Pat Patterson's call, and I received no call, no return call. And it was like 3 months later when Shane Douglas was like, hey, did you get my call? It's like, what call? He goes, yeah, I called your house, pretended to be Pat Patterson.
Oh, man.
I called it the always funny rib of making someone feel like their dreams are coming true. You know? But now, if I'd listened to the message, if my parents had played me the message, I would have understood it was a rib. Because, hello, this is Pat Patterson's. It was Shane literally messing up every single word, every single in plural. So that was not in the cards. And then when I got to WCW, it was going good, but I think by the time '92 rolled around, I was still being used well, but I just wanted to see. But I wasn't being offered anything in the way of a raise, you know.
Right.
So there was still a world of difference between what I was making, which was still good, $150,000. 1991 was
pretty good.
That's pretty good. Still, I'd argue it's still pretty good. But, you know, there was a big disparity between the guys I was working with and what they were making, what I was making. So I just wanted to see if what the market had, what the market bore. And I would be dismissed within a minute, I'd say. It was just a minute. Oh, no, we're not currently looking for any talent. And then I've said in my shows, like, I would sit and watch Monday Night Raw, and I would see the debut of people who I thought I may have been better than. Like,
right.
Talking about Mantar and hokey, bad gimmicks at that time, really bad gimmicks. Kevin Nash said, you were a thing, you were a job, a vocation.
Occupational
You were an
gimmick.
occupation, that was almost across the board, or not almost across the board, but it was a big percentage of guys out there who were occupations.
So when you were talking about in WCW and you felt like there was maybe some income disparity, if you will, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall have always referred to what they called as Sting money. And it was about the 600,000 range. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I thought
that was the high water mark there.
I thought Sting may have been making a little like 7 in the 700s.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the big money. And there were other guys who were making 300 or 400. A little guy here and there making 500. And then when Kevin and Scott came in, and then Hogan, that bar got pushed considerably higher, And that's when our friend Barry Bloom came in, with the favored nations clause. So if somebody else picked up more than that, you were automatically factored. I was never automatically factored in. I was never part of that. But that was good for everybody, because that's what placed pressure on Vince to start offering the guaranteed contracts. I think the payoffs went up considerably. And so going back to what you and I were talking about last week, ultimately, whatever's good for the men and women in the business, I believe, is good for the business, including WWE.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I'm curious from your perspective, as a performer, sure, everybody has goals that they want to achieve professionally and financially.
Yeah.
But was it defeating when you realized, wait a minute, I'm in the same match as Sting and he's 5X? Is that the genesis of the call?
No, I think it was more creatively. I think going back, I can't pinpoint the way I felt in September of 1992 or who I was working with. I was really grateful to have the job I did. It was more the frustration of feeling, like I said, that the carpet's going to be, pulled out from underneath me. I think a lot of guys have felt that,
especially in WCW in that era.
In WCW in that era, yeah, they had kind of worked themselves into a situation. The conundrum they faced, or the talent faced, is that you couldn't make top money unless you were a top guy. So of course you're striving to be a top guy, but you couldn't be a top guy unless you were making top money.
Yeah.